Our story starts off with Hajime waking up in a cave. He begins looking for an exit but sees an adorable rabbit who goes on to test if all dogs go to heaven. Hajime trips and catches its attention, but it sees a gorilla and tries to run away, only to get multiplied and is now added to the food chain. Hajime tries to do the race but gets disarmed while the gorilla does a taste test. He opens a hole into the wall and begins backing away while putting up barricades against the gorilla, until he gets knocked out. He wakes up over a healing crystal and begins to cry. Hajime remembers that he was a part of a dungeon party, but he was very weak and had to be saved by a Monogawa. They see a crystal in the wall, so an adventurer goes for it and activates a trap that brings their party to a room filled with many high-leveled monsters. The party begins getting attacked, so a knight casts a barrier that gets easily broken. Hajime uses powers to form a wall from the bridge and tells them to escape while he holds them back, but the monsters begin to break through. The adventurers launch an all-out attack, so Hajime starts to retreat, but one of the spells targets him. He realizes that someone betrayed him as the bull comes down and destroys the bridge around them, so he falls into the abyss below. It's revealed that he was brought to this world with all his classmates to protect it, but he now decides to survive and smoke anyone who stops him from going home. Hajime sees a wolf in the distance that tries to add him to its diet, but it gets caught in his trap and is buried alive. He tries to eat the monster but begins feeling unimaginable pain while his body mutates and turns him into a badass. Hajime wakes up under the healing crystal and realizes that his stats have all increased, along with giving him access to his victim's ability while drastically improving his earth transmutation skill. Hajime uses all his knowledge and channels America to make pewers along with some bullets. He tests it on Bugs Bunny and brings it back to eat so he can gain its abilities. He decides it's time to hand out karma to the gorilla. It uses Fury Swipe, but he dodges and jumps in the air to aim like a stormtrooper and gets knocked down. Hajime throws a flashbang to disarm the monster and does a taste test in front of it. The gorilla dashes at him but gets the shock of his life, leaving Hajime to blow its mind. He gets up and decides to leave the abyss. He realizes that he can't climb up, so he tries to go down to find another route. He encounters a lizard that petrified his lamp and his stub. It crawls over him to get a flashbang along with a full course of America. On the surface, it's revealed that after Hajime fell into the abyss, Kaori tried to jump in after him, but they knocked her out and brought her back. Shizuku goes outside to practice and explains that when they were first summoned here, the Pope told them about a war between humans and demons. But when demons learned to control monsters, they wiped out the majority of humanity, so they were forced to summon heroes to fight for them. She notices that her classmate is acting nervous and goes over to question him, but he leaves. She goes back over to Kaori, who awakens from her coma. She asks for Hajime, but Shizuku tells her that he's in heaven. Best girl tries to go find him, so Shizuku embraces her while she grieves for her loss. In the abyss, Hajime finds a door, but he has no idea how to open it. He tries to transmute it, but the door blows him off and summons two Cyclops to fight him. He gets a bullseye on one, so the other begins to block. Hajime continues to pew-pew him until its shield breaks, so it attacks him but earns a one-way ticket to heaven. He finds some balls in the monsters and places them inside the door so it can be opened. He goes inside and finds a cube that reveals a prison sentence. He walks away from the charge but begs him to release her because she was betrayed by someone. He goes back, so she explains that she is an unkillable vampire that protected her people, but one day her uncle overthrew her and sealed her in this abyss. He decides to transmute her prison and breaks the seal to free the vampire. She embraces his arms and asks him to name her, so he chooses to call her Yue because she reminds him of the moon. Spikes suddenly come from the wall, so he takes one for the team to save the immortal vampire. He pulls out the spikes and looks up to see a scorpion. He puts Yue on his back and starts blasting while dodging its poison, then throws a flashbang so he can reload. He uses dash to take the high ground and blasts him, but it does no damage. He lands on the ground where the lawsuit comes off his back and begins to suck out his fluid. Yue goes towards the scorpion and unleashes the sun to crush the monster, but it wasn't enough to take it down. Hajime asks her to do it once more and runs off. She drops another one so Hajime can go above it to solve the problem the American way. He begins to take out the crab meat while Yue reveals that the labyrinths were created by the messengers of gods who rebelled against their masters. So Hajime decides to try and find one to help them escape. He creates a railgun from the monster's loot box. They begin to traverse through the labyrinth together while they continue to go further down. He tells her that he plans to get stronger and one day go home, but Yue says she no longer has anywhere to return to, so he offers to bring her to his home when he goes back. They hear a rumbling in the distance and begins to run away from a herd of T-Rexes, but sees that flowers are controlling them. He escapes into a crack and goes to look for the mastermind behind the flowers. He sees an entrance to a cave and runs through the tight hole, then fills it up. They see pollens flying through the air, so he puts up a wall but notices that Yue is now being controlled by the flowers. He runs from her, but the pollen hits him. A caked-up vegan walks towards Hajime and holds the unkillable vampire hostage. She spawns a flower on his head, but it has no effect on him, so she uses Yue to fight. Hajime remembers that Yue is immortal and disarms the creature before showing it something mind-blowing. They set up camp where he offers to give her food, but she comes over to him and decides that she wants to feed on something else. Our duo finds a staircase that leads to the lower levels of the dungeon and begins to travel through unknown territory until they find a door. They enter the room and finds it covered with pillars along with another door at the end. A giant circle appears in the center of the room and spawns a Hydra. It uses many different elemental magic on them, but they dodge and begins to serve it some pain. The white head heals all their damage. Yue launches a fireball at white, but the yellow takes one for the team. The black one goes in front of her and uses genjutsu. So Hajime goes over to blast the monster and brings her behind a wall. He feeds her with a potion to bring her back, but she's been traumatized. Hajime decides to catch a case and tells her that they will survive to go home together. Yue goes over to summon a storm to distract the monster. So Hajime can get close enough to charge his rifle and give 3 of the Hydra heads an outer body experience. The other 3 comes forth, but Yue casts an ability to give them a shocking surprise. Hajime begins going over to her, but White gets back up and decides to use Hyper Beam on the immortal vampire. Hajime takes one for the team and collapses on the floor. The Hydra launches another attack, but she uses a shield to protect them from the shower of death. She gives him a potion in the most normal way possible and takes his pure to run towards the monster. She jumps over its attack and pews him in the face, but White uses another Hyper Beam to blast her away. She crawls over for the weapon while the monster decides to fire at the immortal vampire. But Hajime saves her from taking no damage and tells Yue to suck out his blood to bring back her magic. He runs at the monster and begins pewing the ceiling, then throws grenades inside. He dodges its attack and detonates the boomers to bring the ceiling down on the Hydra and traps it under the rubble. Yue takes this chance to unleash the sun and give the creature a one-way ticket to hell. Hajime collapses, so she goes over and lay beside him as the doors finally open. He awakens and finds himself definitely going to prison. He gently wakes her up and she explains that after the door opened, she carried him inside and began to dress his wounds. They steal the fallen angel's stuff and begins wandering around ruins until they come upon a loot box in a chair. Hajime walks across a circle and activates a spell that brings forth a recording of the angel. He congratulates them on surviving the trials and downloads all the truth of the world into his mind, where he realizes that the fallen angels were actually doing good. He reveals that he has learned ancient magic, so he now has access to creative mode. They bury the angel and discovers a spell to take them to the surface. But Yue shows him that if they continue to conquer the labyrinth, they could find a way to return to his home. Months later, Hajime has built a new arm followed by 2 new rooms and a few more hole makers just in case. Our favorite duo goes to the teleportation circle and leaves to begin a new journey on the surface. Meanwhile, the adventurers go back to the bridge where Hajime fell into the abyss. A magic circle begins to spawn as the bull comes forth, but this time they will not run. Emanagawa uses Getsuga Tensho to cause the bull to charge, but Jimbro steps forward to hold it down while the knight fails to do damage, so Shizuku shows him how it's done. while Amanagawa goes in to give it a pinprick. The monster jumps at them, so they cast a barrier, but Kaori support magic comes in clutch to help push it back to make Amanagawa finish it off with his final attack. They begin to celebrate, but Kaori still seems to be unhappy. Back on the surface, Shay waits for someone, but a T-Rex with an extra chromosome begins to chase her. The furry climbs away as a portal channels to summon Hajime and Yue to her location. She runs towards them and sticks the landing, but they choose to ignore her. The very special T-Rex roars at them, so Hajime shows it the spirit of America. He teaches the furry social distancing, then allows her to explain that her people are about to be wiped out by monsters and reveals that she has the ability to see into the future. He summons his vroom vroom and heads towards the furry tribe. Hajime decides that he will use her as bait so he can no-scope all the monster, then gently introduces her to the floor. Shay shows them her tribe and travels with them until they find another furry tribe that peacefully accepts them into their village. The tribe asks Hajime to train them to become stronger, but they have no idea how to fight. Hajime tells them they're gonna become a prison wife if they don't turn into alphas. Shay trains with Yue and distracts her with trees to sneak behind her for an ambush, but Yue dodges and turns her into an ice cube. She goes over to Hajime and boasts about her progress. Shay asks to join their party and reveals that she's fallen in love with him as the furries came back but are now savages. They take him to the great tree where he sees a pillar. He places the ring inside and is told to come back once he has gained the 4 labyrinth relics. He decides to leave the beast men, so they beg him to join his party, but he tells them to train so when he returns they're strong enough to join him. Then they leave the forest carrying the caked up furry along with them. Our party searches for the entrance of a labyrinth, but Shay feels the need to water the rocks and accidentally finds the opening, but they don't know how to get in, until Shay trips inside the hidden entrance. They begin to fight off monster that scares the fluid out of Shay, then walk through the labyrinth and encounters an Indiana Jones trap that deactivates magic, so Shay takes care of it. They walk through many rooms with traps that our favorite bunny takes care of, but in the end they find themselves back at the start. They wander around until they encounter the final room. They decide to send in Shay to test the waters. She goes in as the armor begins moving, so they begin destroying everything until they reach the door. Shay opens it so they can escape the armors, but they encounter a fallen angel. She asks why he wants to conquer her labyrinth, so he tells her that he just wants to go home. The angels decides not to help them, so Hajime shows her the light, allowing Shay to break her arms so he can introduce some lead to her chest. The angel rises again and drops Legos on them. Hajime dodges the attacks while holding his harem and comes behind her. He grapples to the angel and knocks her to the floor so Yue can freeze her in place. Hajime uses a device to penetrate her with a rod, but it wasn't deep enough, so Shay comes in to push it deeper and destroys the core. Like the video. If you liked the video, subscribe for more, and thanks for watching. Stay swifty.